Philip Gardiner is a UK author and documentary filmmaker who has been researching the world of the esoteric for over 15 years. Philip has recently recorded several documentaries for various channels, including Discovery USA. In 2006, he organized and hosted Philip Gardiner's Forbidden Knowledge Conference UK. Philip also speaks around the world at various conventions and conferences, including the International Metaphysical and Scientific Symposium in Australia, Signs of Destiny in Arizona, and QuestCon in the UK. In addition to this, he has his own weekly radio show, The Philip Gardiner Show, on Net Talk Radio. Through his tenacious spirit and contacts within the world of secret societies, Gardiner is able to uncover and reveal some of the age-old secrets of mankind and brings the revelations into the modern world with scientific analysis. Philip is married with 2 children and lives in the heart of Robin Hood country in England. He has a master's degree in strategic marketing. And with us from the UK is Philip himself. Are you there, Philip?
I'm here.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, it's so nice because the last people that we actually had on the show was Sopath.
Oh, yes, the voice of the universe.
Voices of the universe, yeah. So it's awesome that I really wanted to have you after them because I thought it would be the perfect fit.
They're a marvellous band, incredible music that they put out. 3 of them together just blow me away.
I can see why. They were just amazing. They were lovely. It was a really cool interview, and I think we would really get along great.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody couldn't get along with Sopath.
Yeah.
There's just you've got Julie who's got a voice that is just so angelic, so much like Karen Carpenter, reborn. Yeah. Steve, who writes wonderful music, he just draws it out of the universe, and then Mike, who writes lyrics, and together they're just incredible. I can give them anything, any subject for the documentaries, and they will just come back with the most mind-blowing music.
Yeah, it's like channeled music almost. Well, I guess it is.
Absolutely. You know, like I say, the 3 of them together, they're like a holy trinity who draw out the soul of the universe. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they sure are. So how does a marketing guy come out to be such a prolific writer on the esoteric and secret societies?
I think most people who are in marketing eventually discover what they're doing isn't all that wonderful, because it's manipulation at the end of the day. You are taking a product or a service or something, and you are trying to convince people to buy it, and you know that while you're doing that, you're using psychology at surface levels and at deeper levels. And what I did is, in my part-time, I loved reading history, and I was a member of a thing called the Byron Society, Lord Byron the poet. And you've got a kind of esoteric world there with Lord Byron, who wrote some remarkable things. And the world of history, when you're reading that, with the marketing mind, you read it and you realise that there's a lot of propaganda going off. Not just when people have won the war, who then go and write the history, but before the war, they would write propaganda so that they would gather people to their cause anyway. So there's an awful lot of propaganda in history, and you have to be really clever and really investigative to discover what the true history is. So that kind of got me started to try and uncover what the truth was about history, and is what the church tell us correct, and is what the historians from Victorian periods and various other times, is it all true? Mm-hmm. And you find that there's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of control, a lot of mind manipulation. But beneath all of that, eventually you discover that there is more subtle truths being hidden within texts. You find that alchemy hides deeper truths about ourselves, not necessarily secretly hidden, just there in plain view if you know how to read it. And so it's just one at a time going through all these histories and all these esoteric, symbolic and sacred natures of man. And you basically can't do your job anymore as a marketing man. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't continue to do that job. I lectured to governments, I lectured to big corporations. I would tell them how to sell their disgusting drinks and all the rest of it, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Simple as that, really.
Yeah,
mind changes.
Yeah, once you reach a certain vibration, there's no going back.
No, absolutely not. You're stepping from one world into another, and it's like the Matrix. Do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? And once you've taken it, you can't go back.
Yeah, it's an impossibility.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, first off here, one of your books, Gnosis, The Secret of Solomon's Temple Revealed. Now, that's also, you've just recently come out with a DVD with that as well?
That's right, yeah. It came out late last year, both the book and the DVD, and it's amazingly, it's actually my best-selling book at the moment, beating everything else. I'm getting emails from all over the world, from Freemasons and Knights Templar and you name it, all kinds of different people saying, incredible that they've actually, one of them, for instance, 32nd degree Freemason, who's actually a psychologist as well, emailed me to say it's changed his life completely. He did not realise that that's what it was all about. So it seems to have done the trick. And to me, it was the easiest book I've ever written. You know, when I wrote The Serpent Grail with Gary Osborne, it took years to write that, years of research, years of writing, years of travelling around the world. Gnosis, following on from that, just came so fast. It was unbelievable. It oozed out of me. I was obviously a portal for the knowledge. Yeah,
just flowed right out.
But it's, what is it about? Gnosis, it's called Gnosis because of the word itself. It's a Greek word, and it means, English language is an appalling language for translating ancient words. And if you look it up, Gnosis means knowledge. But it's much deeper than that. It's a knowledge so deep that, the ordinary person won't normally understand it.
When I was watching your trailer on Gnosis, as I was watching it, the one thing that came to mind was, as you were kind of describing what Gnosis means, what came to my mind was the spiritual awareness of the self-divine.
That's exactly what it means. Gnosis means it's the direct mystical experience of the divine in the self. And that's what they're trying to tell us, This is why there was a lot of trouble between the early Gnostics and the early formation of Christianity very much from the Gnostics anyway. But a very left-brained kind of Christianity, a very imperial Christianity, wanted the concept of experiencing the divine in the self wiping out. They didn't want that, because if you can experience the divine inside yourself, the true self, in the Jungian terms of it, then you no longer need to go to your priest on a Sunday and pay your 10% dividend to the man, and you no longer need to, be tied to the stories of the stained glass windows, and you just don't need to do that anymore, because you can experience it within. What people have difficulty with is the concept of the self. What is it? And you ask people, so what are you? And they'll turn around and say, I'm a salesman for so and so, or I'm a writer, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. You're not any of those things. They're attributes of what you do. People will go and watch James Bond films, and they'll walk out of there imagining themselves to be this James Bond, going and buying a James Bond car and a James Bond pen, and having this persona, which they've basically taken on themselves. And it's all based in falseness, because James Bond never existed in the first place, and he is kind of the alter ego of Ian Fleming, who was basically a very messed up man. At the end of the day, he died young, he smoked 60 cigarettes a day, he drank like a fish, and he was messed up. He had issues with his brother and his dead father and his mother and all kinds of different things. And so we're taking on a persona, the creation of a man in that state, and we're walking around the streets imagining ourselves to be James Bond, or in our country a lot of people think that they're David Beckham, footballer, or whoever it is that influences them. We take on that persona, and we do that throughout our entire lives, and we build up a great many of these things on top of us, whether it's our parents, whether it's our peers, whatever it is. And you get to a state in life where you may realise that is falseness, if you've understood correctly. And so you have to peel those layers back, and it can be a little bit like peeling back the layers of an onion, and it can often make you cry, because you're getting rid of things that you perceived were yourself. Well, Gnosis is a whole process of uncovering that true self, that core of the onion. And sometimes it can be painful for people, and sometimes It can be a very freeing experience for people, and that's the divine in ourselves when we get to that root core and understand that self is in connection entirely to the universe, to what people would call the mind of God, the divine. It's an incredible experience for people.
Yeah, and I mean, it is so freeing and just it's so uplifting, and to be around that, it just, those ripples get sent out, and the more that happens, the more other people peel off a layer, and it's just, it just keeps flowing and flowing.
Yes, it's a marvelous experience, but you have to be careful, because one of the things that's been linked into this an awful lot is a thing called the Kundalini. Now, for people who don't know the word, it's an Indian, a Hindu word for the coiled one, or the coiled serpent. And people will go through a process known as the Kundalini, either purposefully, or sometimes they'll have the mystical experience accidentally even, and have these blinding flashes in the mind. Now, there has to be a warning with that, because it can cause serious psychological problems. It can cause psychosis, an imbalance in the mind, which leads to bipolarism and all kinds of different issues. And what our Gnostic friends told us, which were directly linked to India and the Hindu traditions, and this gnosis can be shown to have derived to a large extent from India. What they told us was that if we're approaching this mystical experience of the divine, we need to do so in balance, perfect balance. Because if we go into this unbalanced, if we go into this with issues, if we're a very male-dominated, fiery-sided person that's very aggressive, then we'll get a seriously aggressive knockback. You have to go through this process in a gentle, balanced method. And the blinding flash that people speak of isn't the be-all and end-all of the mystical experience. Real truth of all this is to gain wisdom.
Yeah, it's really the beginning.
Absolutely.
It's like death. Ever seen the movie Jacob's Ladder?
Yeah.
I so much refer back to that a lot, because to me, the creatures in Jacob's Ladder, those faceless creatures, is what happens at both these times when one reaches towards enlightenment or reaches toward what we refer to as death. And in that moment, like you say, if you're not balanced, you're going to see the demons. But it's really the same creature. And if you go with an open heart and in balance, that creature is going to be an angel.
Absolutely.
But if you don't, that creature will be a demon. So it all depends on you and where you're at.
Yeah. And the proof of it comes in several ways, doesn't it? It comes in one, the ancient texts tell us these things, and not so ancient texts as well. We can look at the Grail story, for instance, and we'll find that if you try to get the Grail, you won't get it. You have to be in a neutral position. You have to have an open heart, as you say. And the other evidence comes from what scientists do today, what psychologists do with the research, with people who have mental issues. Now, I'm not saying that they're 100% right, because to me it's the very early and very new science psychology is anyway, so we have to be careful with that too. But so I kind of listen to wisdom that is thousands and thousands of years old, that has been around for a long time, tried and tested, and it tells us the same thing again and again, in balance. Something that today we find extremely difficult, because we're living in a very, very cluttered world.
Yeah, especially with all the fear-mongering that's going on.
Well, fear is the root of a great many evils, and it's the root of mankind's deepest psychology. The fear, not necessarily the fear of death, but the fear of loss of self, even though a great many people don't even realize what that is. But, people don't have a fear of loss of their body, but if they thought that their mind would go, then that's where the fear kicks in. And unfortunately, marketing men play on that all the time. One of the first things that you learn when you get into marketing is to play on fear. Dreadful, isn't it?
Yeah, that propaganda at its best, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. We play on all kinds of fear in marketing. Fear that, for instance, you won't have what your next door neighbours have got. Fear that you are not, that you won't be the alpha male or female. There's so many fears that we play on, but the ultimate one is fear of loss of self. But the wonderful obverse of that is the fear of loss of self, for instance, is that there's another side, because the discovery of the self opens up an entire new world.